3 soft knocks come at your door just after midnight on Halloween, do not answer. That's the sentence that still wakes me up, not because it's true, but because I didn't listen. I moved into the old house in October for the cheap rent and the illusion that a creaky place felt cinematic. The neighborhood smelled of burnt popcorn and cheap incense, plastic pumpkins bobbed in porches, and the wind carried the papery rustle of dead leaves like a whisper around the gutters. I told myself I liked being alone. It made writing easier. Solitude was a clean kind of noise. That night, though, the silence had weight. It pressed into the rooms and left a cold print on my shoulders. I was at the kitchen table, the lamp throwing a thin pool of yellow over coffee rings, and a laptop whose battery blinked like a nervous eyelid. The rest of the house was a black hollowness. I remember the sound first, not the knock, but the faint rubber scrape against the doorframe, like someone testing the contours of the wood with gloved fingers. It was precise, careful. Then the knock, 3 soft taps, measured, close together. My skin tightened. I told myself it was a prank. Kids with masks, maybe, or the neighbor's idiot friend. I wrapped my fingers around the mug until the ceramic warmed my palm and forced myself to look through the peephole. What I saw didn't match the laugh I'd rehearsed in my head. There was a face, but the proportion was wrong. Paint or skin, I couldn't tell. Eyes that were too bright, reflecting the porch light like marbles. A mouth stretched into too many teeth, too wide for the face that held it. There was a sewn smile, a clown's nose, but these were details I could have convinced myself into seeing if I'd been sober. I wasn't drunk. I was wide and hollowed out with something like attention. It didn't move as a person would. The head tilted with the deliberate, uncanny rhythm of a puppet. Through the narrow glass insert of the door, I saw a hand rest on the wood near the knob. The fingers were long, narrow, the nails catching light like small knives. I kept saying he, tapped his thumb against the wood once, twice, then stopped. The house swallowed that sound. It didn't echo. It was absorbed like a thing too dense for sound to pass through. I backed away without meaning to. My breath became loud in the room. The smell hit me next. Not perfume, not smoke, but something metallic undercut with rot. The smell of something dead kept too close. I told myself to call out, to flip the porch light on, to throw the door wide and show whatever it was I wasn't afraid. Instead, I found my voice belonged to the hush between heartbeats. Then, after a long pause that pressed like a palm against my throat, he spoke, a single word, soft, and said as if from just outside the glass, my name. I should have called someone then. I should have told anyone, this is on my porch, please don't come over. But confession is a slow animal. It took me a long time to find the words even to myself. I told myself being rational would help. Light, logic, locks, the small rituals that make danger feel manageable. So I checked the deadbolt. It was tight. I checked the chain. It was latched. I flipped on every light in the house until the rooms felt sterile and exposed, like a stage set. The porch light, though, stayed a dull halo in the glass, and in that halo his eyes would sometimes appear and disappear, like moths trapped in a jar. My phone buzzed, a message from a number I didn't recognize, a single photograph attached. For a second, my thumb hovered over it, because my hands trembled, and because curiosity is always a harmful muscle. The photo was of my front door, taken from the outside, taken from very close. In the glass, reflected and wrong, was a face bent toward the camera, closer than the frame allowed. He had been closer than I thought. Written across the image, in a looping, childish scrawl, were the words, "Don't open." The message didn't have a number, only 3 unread dots where a reply should have been. When I tried to call back, the line fizzed and died. I tried to rationalize away the photo too, someone's sick joke, or a digital manipulation. But then the house began to show me things I couldn't explain. My laptop, the one with the dying battery, online backed up footage from the door camera. I pulled it up, needing proof to hand to a dispatcher, a friend, anyone. The first 30 minutes were normal static, cars passing, the neighbor's porch, an empty street. Then, at 11:53 p.m., the feed stuttered and a new frame resolved. A figure standing in my hallway, just beyond the camera's view, head tilted. The timestamp said 9 p.m. I hadn't been home at 9 p.m. I should have been at the bar, at my desk, anywhere but there. The file flickered. corrupted frames glitched into a smear of teeth and nothing. When it came back, the hallway was empty, but the camera angle had subtly shifted, as if someone had touched the lens. The sounds in the house stopped being ordinary. The radiator's rattle took on a cadence like measured breathing. The upstairs floorboards sighed with long distances between steps, as if someone was pacing not to cross them, but to map them. I heard a faint, deliberate scrape beneath my bedroom door, not the light curiosity of the earlier tapping, but the slow, satisfied drag of something testing for gaps. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard it. The whisper of latex against skin, the breath of something that scented of sugar and old pennies. It whispered my childhood nickname, the one only my mother used when she wanted to soften me before a scolding. I thought about calling the police again. I thought about barricading the door with anything heavy. I thought about running out into the street, any light, any safety. Instead, I crawled toward the closet, my palms leaving prints in the plaster dust. The house had become a theater, and I, for reasons I couldn't explain, had been promoted to the audience. I closed the closet door and pushed my back against it until the wood scratched my shoulder. Outside, the knob turned, slow, deliberate. The chain rattled once, twice, like someone testing a toy to see if it still worked. Then the mirror inside the closet fogged from a single hot breath, and words smeared across the glass from the inside out. Come play. The closet felt smaller than the house, as if the walls had decided to lean in and listen. My breathing was so loud, I thought the thing outside might follow it into the wood. For a time, I counted the seconds between my heartbeats like a prayer. 1, 2, 3, because naming rhythm felt like naming safety. Nothing answered. The knob turned again, softer now, like a thought. The chain shuddered once, like a single dry leaf sliding down a gutter. I realized then how stupid the theater of my precautions had been. The deadbolt and chain had not been protection. They had been props, theater hardware put up to make me feel brave in a play that had already rehearsed me. In the dark, logic peeled away. Memory came to me quick and bright. The way my father used to breathe close to my ear and tell me stories to stop me from crying. The way a hand that loved can sometimes press too hard. The clown smelled like pennies and sugar. The house smelled like my father's jacket after a funeral. The two smells braided together until I couldn't tell which guilt belonged to which man. A slow scrape moved across the hallway, not on the floorboards, but across the line where shadow met light. The closet door trembled under something patient. I thought of the photograph, of the timestamp that had been wrong, of footage that had lied. The world had started repeating me back to me, but with its teeth sharpened. I pushed my back off the closet door and slid down until my knees met my chin. I could feel the floor cool through my trousers. My phone was a hot little animal in my pocket, the screen a useless black. Then the sound shifted. The noise was no longer at the door. It was inside the walls, a wet, satisfied fiddle of sound, like paper being folded into a mouth. A shadow pooled under the closet door, and thin air licked the nape of my neck. I wanted to cry out, to scream the name of anyone, anything, but my voice was a lid screwed on. The thing outside had learned to mimic the small, private languages, my childhood nickname, the cadence of my breath, the rhythm of my own doors. When the closet door finally yielded, it did not explode inward in a violent rush. It unlatched the way a patient thing opens a present. There was a hand first, long and wrong, fingers splayed against the wood. Then a face, not the person I'd glimpsed through glass, but a softened, intimate version of someone who had learned to live inside my memories. He smiled like someone who had been given back a toy he'd thought lost. The light from the hallway pooled around him like water. I remember thinking in a clear, small way that the world had been a simple line I had failed to cross in time. My legs moved before my mind could protest. I pushed the closet open, because some part of me wanted to see the rules broken before I died to them. He stepped forward, and the house inhaled. The last thing I tasted was the metallic edge of his breath, warm and close. He was already inside.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.